Donald Trump has named his chief of staff. Let's bring in Matt Terrill now. He's a Republican strategist and managing partner at Firehouse Strategies, joining us from Washington. So, Matt, thanks for being here. Let me get your reaction. Susie Wiles, the chief of staff.
Well, certainly it's a pick that makes sense. This is someone who's well respected by both President-elect Trump, by his team, and by those who've worked with her back to her days, even working with President Trump when he was running as candidate Trump in 2016, as well as working on his 2020 campaign as well. So this is someone who's been with him for quite some time here, frankly, since the start, really, of his political career. And so I think this is a pick that makes sense. This is someone he's clearly comfortable with, has confidence in, particularly given how she played a key role in leading his successful campaign this time around in the 2024 presidential election. So this is someone who's well respected, makes sense. It's a smart pick by the president-elect.
Tell me what we know about her. She was on stage. We've got the picture up here during the victory speech. Trump referred to her as the Ice Maiden. She's 67 years old, and I know that she helped Ron DeSantis down in Florida as well as Donald Trump really secure Florida in the last election. What do we know about her and her ability to really keep Trump on message, as Katie was talking about when we chatted with her?
Sure. Well, look, she's got a reputation as being someone who gets the job done, number one. And, I've worked in Florida politics, and I can tell you, everyone I talked to in Republican circles there, but Democrat circles alike, respected her and understood her as someone as being a great operator. But with President-elect Trump, I think the biggest thing he's been looking for is recognizing, he's been public about this, is that, his first time around in his first term, he felt, I think, as though there were people that he had put in place there in his administration that maybe he wouldn't have put in place in hindsight. And the reality is he's got a second chance here, a new chance to become president once again. And look, there are going to be a lot of positions he's going to have to fill, but being the chief of staff to a president, that's a very important role. And that's someone who's usually the first person that the president sees when he arrives at the Oval Office in the morning and the last person he sees when he leaves. So look, the reality is this is a very important decision to make. It's got to be someone that can do the job, no question, but also, which Susie can, but also somebody who the president has comfort level with, has confidence in. I think many would argue that he does with Susie Wiles. Clearly he does. And it's one of the many reasons, I'm sure, why he made this pick.
Okay, let's turn now to some of the other names that likely are being discussed at Mar-a-Lago right now, where the president-elect is, figuring out his transition, because as you say, there will be a lot of positions that he needs to fill. One of the names that we have heard is Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. What do you make of him and a position that perhaps he could fill?
Well, there's no question, this is what the president said even on election night, was that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was going to get a portfolio, very broad and clear portfolio with respect to health, and has made it clear that that's something that he's going to give Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I think we'll have to wait and see what kind of a title, or if you will, specific role that he is given. I think time will tell on that. But look, the reality is I think it's going to be an and not or approach. You're going to have some people who come from entering this new administration who worked with President Trump in his last administration, and new people such as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. coming into the fold here, who weren't a part of the first administration, but are now coming in. And clearly he's been very clear throughout the campaign that he'll be getting a portfolio that'll be aimed on health.
Let's talk about Elon Musk, because he was a big part of at least the back end of Trump's campaign. He was out there stumping with him at various rallies. What could a potential role be for him? Because he, of course, has a lot of different companies. He wears many different hats in the corporate world. Could we see him enter the federal government now in some sort of position which has been talked about, like cost cutting? That's one position that I've heard talk about.
Yeah, we'll see what ends up happening here. I can tell you that, again, is something that, to your point, was talked about in the campaign. That the $2 trillion number of having to cut with respect to President Trump believing that number of being a number to cut in terms of the deficit and debt and spending, if you will. And Elon Musk has been clear that he'd be wanting to take on that role that you just mentioned in some form of fashion. Now, whether that's him coming into a formal role in Washington, D.C., probably not going to be the case, just given he's got a lot of other things on his plate that he's doing in the private sector. But who knows? I think time will certainly tell on this, no question. We'll see what the president does. Ultimately, it's up to the president. The president needs to make that decision. It's up to him what kind of a role an Elon Musk or others will play. And it's not always individuals coming into Washington. Often people can play a role as outside advisors and counsel, if you will, to the president from outside of Washington, D.C. So we'll see what happens there.
During his last administration, we saw several aides leave very publicly, and some fired, some quit. What do you think Donald Trump has learned from staffing that last administration to now? And really, how do you think that is going to affect how he really hires for these positions moving forward?
Well, I think he knows Washington far better, obviously, now than he did before. My understanding is that when before becoming president, he never even spent a night in Washington. So look, the reality is he now knows Washington, knows these roles in a different way, in a better way, frankly. And so to that end, he's also, I think, put people in place that he trusts to run this transition. Howard Lutnick and Linda McMahon are a few of the individuals clearly running this transition. And frankly, they've been running it for months now. You know, the reality of the transition doesn't just start today, or I should say on the heels of Election Day. It's been in process, in place. And I think, and I suspect he's got trusted people around him who are helping to guide him in some of these decision-making processes. But he knows Washington, he knows the White House, he knows the job as president now. Prior to this, he didn't know Washington. And so look, I think it comes with experience. You know, you get better with experience. And I think he's put a real premium on learning those lessons that he's publicly admitted of putting other people in place for different positions. He'll have an opportunity to do that this time around. I think he's got trusted people around him. But this first selection of Susie Wiles, I think, is very telling. It tells you he's going with people, at least out of the gate here, who he trusts, respects, and knows. And I think it's very telling for what he may very well do with these other positions. And loyalty is key to him as well. Okay, we will have lots of time to discuss more names as they are leaked or become available in the weeks ahead. Matt, I hope you come back for that conversation. That was Matt Terrill, a Republican strategist and managing partner at Firehouse Strategies, joining us from our Washington studio.